Three, two, one. All right, everyone, welcome back here. Southern Utah Hockey Report. Gabe Gauthier for a interview with former NHL player Jack Skille. Jack had a 14-year professional career. 10 of those seasons was in the NHL with multiple teams, but also played in Europe. Prior to all of that, he grew up in Wisconsin, so he's a cheesehead. Went to UW-Madison. I played against him for one season. It was my senior year and his freshman year. But Jack is now in Park City, Utah, has his own academy. We're going to talk more about that. But Jack, thanks for jumping on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Happy
Yeah.
to be here.
No, it's awesome. And this is where, we've had some great people on the show. George Chalice, and this is where it led to coming on and just the impact that people have with the hockey community and is important. And that's why I wanted to have you on this show to talk about what you've done after your career, what you've done with youth hockey, what you've done with pro hockey, and just expand on that and just talk more about it. So first, for you being in Madison, growing up in Wisconsin, just walk through a brief stint of how you grew up. Did you play AAA hockey? And then how'd you get to the National Development Program?
Okay, good question. Yeah, it's a long one, so
Yeah.
I'll try to be short. But started out with a small little program called the Westmoreland Saints in Madison, Wisconsin. Very, very small organization. And that was my, mini mites, a couple years there. And I actually got, I had internal fuel pretty quick as a kid. Like I loved the game of hockey and I just really loved winning. Like for me, it was just like I really wanted to win. It wasn't my parents, it wasn't the coaches. The organization Westmoreland was just, not very competitive for me. So, I remember telling my dad, I think it was like kind of had a little bit of a like kid meltdown in the locker room. And I just was like, hey, I want to win, and my dad was like, okay, like we talked about it and we ended up going to this organization like closer to her house at the time called the Southwest Eagles. And I played my second year of mites there. And it was just a bunch of Verona, Wisconsin kids or Fitchburg kids. A lot of my buddies that, I'd already, been going to school with or would have been going to school later in life with. So it was a good move emotionally for myself as a player to like and socially to be around my buddies. And we got lucky because we ended up, having some pretty good players from Fitchburg and Verona. We ended up winning the state championship in the AA division that year in Wisconsin for the Southwest Eagles. And the following year in squirts, I decided it was Phil Kessel actually was on our AA team that year too. So
Pittsburgher
Phil,
Phil.
yeah, Phil and I were teammates that year in the state championship. And then our first year of squirts, I believe it was first year of squirts, we decided to play for AAA Madison Caps. So we played that. I didn't like it because it was so much travel, too many tournaments, was really falling behind in school. Not to mention my parents were very, blue collar, like they had some blue collar jobs, so we really struggled. Like, and I started paying attention to that. I could feel it as a kid. So I just said, guys, it's okay. Like I would rather play with my buddies at the AA program next year.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, all right. So my dad was our coach and, went back for a second year squirt, won a state championship for AA hockey. Phil continued to go on with the Capitals. And that was pretty much my AAA hockey experience. It was just 1 year squirts up until high school.
Yeah.
And I played AA hockey the whole way. And then I made varsity high school hockey for Verona, Wisconsin as a freshman. That summer was a tryout for Team Wisconsin. Back then, Team Wisconsin was before and after team, still is AAA before and after the high school season. And it was only for U18s. So all the best high school players in the state at that point. It was just newly designed and grown by Matt Carey, my father, and a couple other people. My father was an established high school hockey coach in the state of Wisconsin at that point. He actually ended up coaching quite a few NHLers that played for him,
That's pretty cool.
shockingly, at Madison West High School. But we had the tryout that year, my freshman year, and that was the first time I got cut. So my dad was the head coach of that U18 Team Wisconsin AAA team, and he cut me, right? And I wasn't ready. And so my mom had a nice, healthy meltdown. We still laugh about it to this day in the kitchen in front of me. She was pissed at my dad. First time I'd ever seen my mom go crazy, and she admits to it to this day. And but I knew internally, like, dude, you're talking Pavelski,
Yeah,
Josh Engel, Davis Trubisky, Joe Pascula. There are guys that ended up playing professional hockey on that team that year, and they were a really strong
I
team,
played with
Wisconsin.
both those. I played with
Yeah,
Pascula and Drewski. Yeah,
they're good dudes, and they were good players,
yeah.
right? So they ended up winning the national championship that year against Shattuck St. Mary's in Colorado Springs. So yeah, I didn't belong on that roster. So that was the first time I really got cut, but I used it as motivation. And I was like, I really want to make Team Wisconsin next year. I had a really good freshman year, and was well over a point per game, which really doesn't matter, but I mean, I guess it does. But high school hockey wasn't like the greatest back then, so I always kind of kept that in perspective.
Yeah.
And that following summer, after my freshman year, I got invited to the Green Bay Gamblers camp, and Marco Siki was the head coach. And I remember Oz just saying to me, like, "Hey, we're bringing you in for experience. Like, you're probably not going to make the team. Let's see what you think about it." And I went in and played really well, surprised everybody, and hung in there with the 20-year-olds. They were fighting. They were talking about things in the locker room that I just wasn't ready for. I was still, I just turned 15.
Okay.
So it was like really, really eye-opening experience for me. Well, Oz brought me in after that camp, that training camp in Green Bay, and he was like, "Hey, we'd like to have as you as an alternate this year. You're not going to play a ton of games, but you'll be practicing with us all year, and we'll have your rights and yada yada yada." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." So we get in the car, and my dad just said, "What do you want to do?" And I broke down in tears. I
Yeah.
just said, "Please don't make me do it." Right? And he said, "Okay, well, here's the deal. I'll make a deal with you. Like if you go back to Verona, Wisconsin for high school hockey, like you're gonna play if you got to try out for Team Wisconsin later in the summer. You have a big year, you got to outwork everybody. You got to do things that other players are not willing to do if you're gonna skip out on the USHL experience." So I said, "Okay, deal, done." So I worked so hard that year. I made Team Wisconsin, and then I started realizing that Mike Eves was attending our games. Before that season started, I'd gone on a couple unofficial visits to some college teams, Michigan State being one of them, Michigan. I talked to BU and BC a little bit, and right in November-ish, my dad was roommates with Mike Eves back in the day as teammates for UW-Madison. He said, "Do you want to meet with Eves?" I said, because he's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to be a Badger." He says, "Well, we need to meet with Eves." So he called a meeting. We sat down in the office. Um, that summer, I'm sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around here,
You're
but
good.
I also went through the Select 15s tryout process. I made it all the way through to Ann Arbor before that high school season. That was the same summer of the USHL. So I had a really big summer. I just was in terms of exposure and using the USA Hockey tryout process as a way
Made the
as
right decision.
made the right decisions, and ended up getting a lot of traction there. So then because of that whole trial process, Marco Siki having a relationship with Eves, going through the development camp and everything and making it to Ann Arbor, that's what got me the visits to school. And sat down with Coach Eves in his office, and he said, "What are we doing here, young Jackson?" And I said, "Well, Coach, I have some scholarship offers from Michigan State, Michigan. We're still waiting on BU, BC. I think they're there. Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be a Badger." He goes, "Well, in that case, we'll throw our offer on the table." It was like literally that quick.
Crazy.
So I was like, Done. Like I'm a Badger all day." right? So he's like, okay, well, Andy Baggett from the Wisconsin State Journal is going to call you tomorrow. You're going to have a write-up in the paper. So 2 days later, I'm walking into high school at Verona High School, and the Wisconsin State Journal is on the tables of the first class that I had. It was Business 101.
Oh
I'll never
wow.
forget it. And every kid had the Wisconsin State Journal, and I was on the front page. And I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. So I was committed. And if you look at that, it seems like, I didn't really have many struggles
Mhm.
for exposure because I followed the right path. I did what was best for me in my development. My dad was my coach. He was really good and he was really experienced. So I had that up my sleeve too. And I did a lot of work consistently away from home. That, the old cliche of character is what you do when nobody's watching, right? I remember, I don't know if you remember GoldenEye. I played GoldenEye N64 when I was a kid, and every time I'd be playing there, I tell parents this all the time. I'd be sitting there playing, and my dad would just walk by me, and he would just ask me one question, and he'd just say, "Jack, what's that? What do you think that kid in Russia's doing right now?" And he'd walk away. That was it. And it was like he stuck a dagger in me, and it just kind of twisted on its own when he walked away. And I immediately shut the system off, went downstairs in the basement, shot like 1,000 pucks, jumped around, did whatever, got all sweaty, hands all blistered, walked up the stairs. My dad said, "How's that feel? Did you beat him?" Right. And that was it. It was like I had internal fuel, and that's, the stuff that I did, training early in the morning, before school started in high school, guys making fun of me on my team. What are you doing in here? I want to make it to the NHL. And they're laughing at me, all that stuff. And running home for practice, like middle of February, um, freezing cold weather in Wisconsin, pitch black dark, headlamp on, 6 mile run from after practice, right?
Yeah.
Those were the things that I did. And it really paid off because I ended up making Team USA, National Team Development Program, through that tryout process. My junior year of high school is when I went there. And then, the rest in terms of my youth career is history.
Yeah. And so as that's amazing story because you essentially grew up in the town, with the program you were wanting to be a part of and just working your bag off. And it goes back to, one of the interviews we had with George Chalice and just talking about the different mindset players have that make it far versus the ones that just get to a place. And what you just talked about, we're going to circle back on that because it rings true to, youth hockey these days. And, what are you doing in the off season or what are you doing in the second season of youth hockey? But right now, I want to touch on the development program. And you also had the opportunity to play in the World Juniors through the development program, which is really awesome because I had the opportunity to play for the program. I ended up staying in the BCHL at the time because I was already there for a year. I already established good friends and had a good rookie season. But playing for the program is something special because you're considered one of the elite players for your age group in the country, and then you're also having the opportunity to represent your country in international play. So talk about that decision of why you went to the national development program and just that feeling that you have being an alumni.
Well, I think it started for me. I honestly, this is going to sound strange to you, but I wasn't never the guy that paid attention to all the pizzazz and all like the notoriety stuff like
The
that. I
hype.
would just yeah, all the hype. I just was like, I'm about the work.
Yeah.
And at game to game, be the best player, be the best practice player, be the hardest working player on the ice. That was just my mentality through and through. And it might, be hard to believe, but Adam Pino, I don't know if you remember that name, but Adam Pino was one of the like phenoms back then. And I went to Bobby Orr was the Orr group was my family advisor because college teams were talking to me. It wasn't like a family advisor to get me on a junior team. It was like a real deal, like making
Correct.
sure that the conversations were going
Negotiations.
correctly and negotiations or whatever, and to NCAA clearinghouse standards. And we were learning from those advisors as well. But I remember going to Boston for the org groups, just like annual camp, in the summer, just to get all their guys in the same spot. And now I got to play against their Canadian prospects and all those guys. So it was a really good matchup for me, and just in terms of an eye opener, where I needed to go. And he brought in Adam Pino, who is currently playing a year up with the National Team Development Program on their U17 team. He was I believe, an 86 birth year, playing with the 85s,
Okay.
like Ryan Suter's team and Parisi and all those guys. So he
Yeah.
was like a phenom, and he came there and he had his USA gear on, and that's when it first hit me. I was like, oh my God. Like, and I remember, I'm not kidding you. I told a Canadian, I was like, pretty sheltered, like
Okay.
nerdy kid about the work and stuff. And I told one of the Canadian guys, I go, oh, man, I hope I can be that good someday. And he laughed at me. He goes, yeah, right. And I go, I distinctly remember in that moment going, F you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna prove you wrong. Right. So I went home and I busted for a whole year. And that was when I went into that summer for Select 15s. I was like, I was hungry. I'm like, I'm making Team USA. That was my mission at that point.
Okay.
It was a chip on my shoulder. And I ended up making it. And the development program was awesome because you're with the best players of your birth year at that time, on the same team. You're moving together. You're all away from home together. I lived with the Belt family for the first time at 16 years old in Ann Arbor, and it was a boot camp. I mean, their first year at that program is, I don't know if it's still the same, but back then it was really grueling, lifting every day, practicing every day.
Who were your coaches back then?
So my head coach was David Quinn,
Okay.
and the assistant coach was John Lilly. And then Quinny, yeah, so we had Quinny U17 year. So me, Kessel, Gerby, Jack Johnson, um, and Jeff Frazee. We were like, and we were producing really well for that team for the first half. So we were playing against NAHL teams as 16-year-olds,
Yeah.
and then Four Nations tournaments overseas and at home. And great experience playing Four Nations tournaments, because you play against your age level in all those other countries. So I had been basically competing and training every day my whole life against a ghost.
Hmm.
And then I saw those ghosts, like I met them on the ice later on in life, where it was like, oh, these are the kids that I've been, metaphorically training against. And I matched up very nicely against them. That's how I'll put it. And I was
Yeah.
like very confident. So we had a good year. And then halfway through the season, about Christmas time, John Hines was the U18 coach at that point for the 86 birth years. And I think I can't remember his name. He's still with USA Hockey. Was the assistant for him. So John Hines calls me after Christmas and says, right before I got back from break, hey, we'd like to pull you back up um, from the U17s. We would like to put you up onto our U18 team to finish the year. We have some injuries, we have some stuff going on, whatever. We'd love for you guys. So we brought me, Kessel, Gerby, Jack Johnson, and Jeff Frazee, our goalie, up. We finished the year that year, our junior year, with the U18 team. So now we're playing NAL schedule, college schedule at that point, and Four Nations tournaments to finish the year. So I believe my first game with the U18 team was against Michigan at Yost Arena, and I was still 16. So I got completely run over
Oh
like
yeah.
several times that game. Like, they hated playing against us. Like, I still have scars on my chin from that game, from my cage hitting my chin, splitting me open.
Yep.
And that was my first real introduction to D1 college hockey at 16.
Yeah. Because it's
And
like, why are we playing against these kids?
right, exactly. So then again, use it as motivation. Oh boy, I'm going to be U18 next year. We actually went, sorry, that year, finished that year in Minsk, Belarus, lost in the finals to Russia, Malkin's team, in the gold medal game. So we got silver that year.
Mhm.
And there's a picture of me somewhere breaking down at the blue line during the Russian national anthem. Like, it was like crushing. So I went into the summer like, I want to win a world championship. I want to do well against college teams. I got a lot of work to do. And I just really put in another big summer and went in full head of steam to that U18 season, and just really excited to play some college hockey. Still playing in all, they're playing USHL now, but it was a really healthy developmental experience. I think I gained about 15 pounds my first year, my junior year of high school at the development program. So really developed with my growth spurts and the work I was putting in. So I ended up going that U18 year college schedule, doing well, playing null, but still not paying attention to the hype. And then towards the end of the season, I started noticing like I'm on the board, like the prospect boards. Like I might be a first or second rounder. And I was like, oh my God, like this is gonna happen. And I started really paying attention to our Four Nations tournaments. I started seeing NHL scouts at those tournaments overseas and at home. And I'm like, oh my God, are they here to watch us? Like me? Like this is crazy. And I was playing really, really well.
Mhm.
And toward the end of the season, I bumped down. Right at the end of the season, I was ninth, projected ninth overall to Ottawa because they had the pick that year. And we had the draft in Ottawa. And I had good interviews with several different teams. I think I had 15 or 16 or 20. I think I had around 20 interviews at the combine with 20 different teams. And I just was like, I have no idea where I'm going. Like, this is crazy. I was just nervous, like sweaty teenager kid, nervous talking to these NHL execs, like
Yeah,
no idea what's
it's
going on.
intimidating.
Intimidating, right? And then I ended up getting drafted seventh overall at that draft by the Blackhawks. I had a good
Yep.
interview with them, and I was floored. Like my family was right there, but the Blackhawks were my team growing up. We didn't have the Minnesota Wild then,
Yeah.
right? So it was Blackhawks was the closest team. I had a dresser, the red dresser in my room with Blackhawks hockey pucks as the knobs. I had like Blackhawks stuff all over my room. I was a fan of Chris Chelios, and the next thing you know, I'm getting drafted seventh overall by them. So it was
That's
a pretty
amazing.
surreal experience.
Did so you said you were with the org group, right? Was your
Yeah.
agency? So did you guys have uh an understanding, like, so before the draft, did you guys have kind of an understanding that Chicago may be taking you, or was it like one or two teams, or were you completely like locked in that I'm going to Chicago?
No, I had no idea. I thought like I was gonna go ninth or 10th or
Wow.
11th, like I thought but it was a weird draft, right? So it was in the Marriott Hotel in Ottawa, not at a stadium like it usually is, right? So we had this little tiny conference room that we were all sitting in, and they had this bigger conference room with the stage and everything and the crowd and the media and all that stuff. But in the media room, they called it the green room.
Yeah.
We're all sitting at round tables. So obviously, like Jack Johnson sitting with his family, his agency, CAA, and Sidney Crosby sitting over there next to him, and all the guys were in the room. And the camera crew would give it away what the next pick was. So
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, camera crew goes right up to Sid first. Boom, everybody knew Sid
Yeah.
gets picked. Then it's Bobby Ryan. Then it's Jack, and then it's Gilbert. Or no, not Gilbert Brule, Pouliot, or I think it was Marc-Andre Pouliot.
Yeah.
And then fifth, there was some discrepancy with Poulet because, or not Brule, sorry, because he didn't want to go apparently to Montreal. There's some sort of media attention there.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, oh, Brule's going to go fifth. Like Montreal's not going to listen to that. They're going to pick him. Well, they ended up picking Carey Price.
That's right.
So it was like, whoa, that kind of shuffled the deck a little bit. And sixth pick was Columbus. Camera crew went up to Brule right before they announced it. Okay, guess Brule's going to Columbus. Boom, goes to Columbus. And then boom, camera comes up to my table. And I'm like,
What the hell?
Chicago's next pick. I'm like, no way. Like, are you kidding me? And then Dale Talon announced they picked me. So I was just like, this is insane. Everybody was in tears, like I was gonna be close to home.
Yeah.
Everybody was just just shocked like by that whole process. We had no idea.
That's amazing. So after you're drafted, right? Because you're 18, you're still within the National Development Program. You talked about going to Madison, Wisconsin. Now, was there a game plan set out by Chicago, by your agency? Because you played 2 years at UW, and I know you had an injury as well too. So just walk us through after the draft. then entering UW Madison, what was the game plan going into those?
I was locked in. Like I'm a Badger.
Yeah.
So I was like, Chicago didn't really, it was pretty old school still. It was still transitioning into what we have today of like communication, and everything. They didn't really communicate a ton back then. It was just like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'm going back to college. We agree. I think that's a good move for your development, right? So went back, played, not went back, went to school, was excited about it, really wanted to be a Badger, wear the uniform, win some games. Fell into an absolute wagon college team. I mean,
Hmm.
if you look back at that team and all the guys that went on to play pro hockey from it, and a lot of us were true Wisconsin guys. We
Yeah.
grew up Wisconsin hockey, youth hockey, junior hockey, everything like close by.
Except for Phil
Um,
Kessel.
yeah, Phil Kessel decided to be a golfer. Yeah, that's on him. Like that's fine. He ended up having a good NHL career, better than mine. But we won a championship in '06.
Yeah.
And it was outstanding. The regionals, NCAA regionals were in Green Bay. The Frozen Four was in Milwaukee. And I think it really started hitting us toward the late of that season, how good we were. Elliott was our goalie. Brian Elliott he's starting to turn it on at the end of the season and really playing outstanding hockey. And I think we started believing like, oh my God, like guys, like if we're gonna win a national championship, it's got to be this year. It's on our home turf, like the whole way.
Oh yeah.
So we ended up beating BC in the final in Milwaukee. And
So I'll stop you there for a second. I
yeah,
watched you guys win that championship because
okay.
that was the first year the NCAA incorporated the senior all-star game.
Okay.
And so it was that year, the 05 06 year, or sorry, '06 when you guys won. I was at that because it was my senior year, and we had the all-star game where we went around and like tried to promote hockey and promoted the Frozen Four in Wisconsin there around Milwaukee. But yeah, no, we got to see you guys win. That was awesome.
Yeah, so it was crazy 2 years because I forgot to even mention, it's super important. We did end up winning the world championship at U18s that year,
Yes.
my senior year in Pilsen, Czech Republic. We stomped Canada 5-1, and we can argue like not all their best players were there because of the Mem Cup, like whatever, right? But it was still we won, right? We got
Yeah.
gold. And then I get drafted, and then I go into my freshman year, and we win a national championship. It was just like an insane 2 or 3 years of development. Like everything was just clicking, everything was going right. And then after my freshman year, I was starting to kind of get some chatter from the OHL.
Mhm.
Through the org group, like there's some teams talking about trading for my rights from St. Mike's. I got drafted, I think it was like 14th or 15th round in the O, like because they were all calling me like my junior year of high school. I'm like, no, I'm not going to the
Yeah.
O. Don't
Going to
draft me.
college.
I'm going to college, right? So St. Mike's ended up taking a flyer on me. So, we had like Kitchener was considering trading for my rights. Me going to the OHL for my sophomore year of college instead of going back to Wisconsin. I decided, you know what? No, like we just won a championship. I need to go back. And we went back, and I just had a pretty tough year. My sophomore year it was pretty hard year. Mike Eves and I weren't really seeing eye to eye. I don't really feel like he understood me as a player, a person.
Mhm.
Um, and it was very frustrating. He's a good man. He's a good coach, obviously, amazing, but I just felt like we weren't clicking. And I ended up that sophomore year, we didn't even make it to the NCAA regionals. Like it was just
Yeah.
like a bad year. We had a lot, I think 6 or 7 freshmen come in or more or 8. I don't know what it was, but we were relatively young. A lot of those guys, Adam Burish left,
Yeah.
Pavelski left, Robbie Earl left. A lot of the guys that were producing a lot of our offense in the year prior left. So we lost some depth,
Yeah.
and it's frustrating. So I didn't really like my meetings with Ever. I just felt like he was ready for me to go, to be honest. Like that's just how the sense I got. So I was like, well, fine, I'm leaving. So I talked to Dale Talon, and I just said, at rookie camp that summer, I just said, hey, like, where are you guys at with me? And he's like, if you're ready to be thrown in the fire, like I'll throw you in the fire. right? So it was like, okay, done. So we signed
Yeah.
the deal and went into camp, my first ever training camp with the Blackhawks, and I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Like I just, playing with Taves and Kane were there now. Kaner was even saying like, yeah, I don't think I'm ready, like I think I'm gonna go back to the O, like whatever. I'm like, dude, you're playing sick right now. Like,
Yeah.
how are you not ready? Right. So he ends up having a lights out camp. Taves has a lights out camp. I'm just like marginally okay. I'm like starting to read the tea leaves. I'm going to the minors. I'm going to Rockford. This sucks. The year after my sophomore year of college for a band-aid of time, I signed pro
Hmm.
um, with them. And I went and I played for the Norfolk Admirals. That was the AHL affiliate for the Blackhawks back then. And
Yeah.
I had almost a point per game. I think I was like 8 points in 9 games. And so I felt like, oh yeah, like I'm good. Like I can play pro hockey.
Yeah.
Like it's
I can
almost
do this.
easier than college, right? But then I went into the big boy training camp that following year and I was like, wow, I'm playing against truly like good grown men here.
Yeah.
And I was still 20 years old. So I was 20 years old and I just didn't have a good camp. So they sent me down to the minors and it crushed me. Right. I was just like, oh my God, like I'm stuck in the minors. I'm a seventh overall draft pick. And it just started kind of swirling around in my head. And I still played well my rookie year. I got, I think, 16 games called up. But then the next 2 years, Dale started kind of juicing the team with free agency signings. Brought in
Yeah.
Hosa, brought in Brian Campbell, brought in like a bunch of guys. And it started like the space for me to get called up in terms of cap space was depleted. Like it was like there was no space for my contract. So I had to wait for a big injury in order to get a call up at that point. So I ended up playing 3 years in the minors.
Yeah.
And it was struggle bus. Like it was like I got less games each year, but I was developing and playing. So like here's my development, and then like here's my opportunity. It was just like plummeting at the
Yep.
same time, right? So it was just like really, really tough. But was a part of the Stanley Cup team in 2010. That was my third year pro. And, some stuff went on. I won't share it, but it was just like, you know, um, I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to be an NHL player. And I
Yeah.
thought it was gonna, the cap was going to be eliminated for playoffs. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be on a Stanley Cup contending team. That ended up not happening. I was in the press box every night watching, but I was a black ace, practicing, staying sharp, traveling with the team, all that jazz as an injured reserve guy.
Yeah.
So I was there the whole run, and I have a cup ring. Never got my name on the cup. Never got a day with the cup, but I guess I'm quote unquote considered a Stanley Cup champion for that.
Yeah.
Uh, but you know, me being me, I'm like, I won't give myself that credit. I wasn't on the ice. I
I
wasn't
didn't earn
grinding.
it.
I didn't earn it. So
I get it. And and that's I have the same mentality. I didn't come nearly as close as you did, but it's the same thing. It's like thanks, but it's like I didn't contribute to that cup, right? Um
right,
but even in the minors, so that's the thing, and that's what led to their championship is their minor league system in Rockford. And I remember I was in Manchester at the time, and we played against Rockford, you guys, and it's like, man, this is a good squad. And you had Versteeg, the 1 year, Big Buff was down there, Troy Brower, Marty St. Pierre,
Cam Barker.
yeah, Cam Barker, like just a team that you're like, okay, these guys are good, and then all of a sudden, boom, they win the cup, right? Which is also like LA, Manchester. When I was there, when LA won the cup in 11 and 12, majority of those guys were call up. Like they just got called up and then had a dynamite season. But for
Sure.
you, again, you weren't satisfied, right? You weren't satisfied. So what were the talks like with your agent? What were the talks with Chicago? And then what led to the trade?
Well, so that offseason after they won the cup, I remember Stan Bowman just like giving me a hug and saying, like, you've been a character guy. You've really, I'm sorry things panned out like this, but you've done an amazing job. Like, we want you next year on our team. We're gonna talk to your agent. Next year is gonna be your year. So I was like going into that offseason like pretty excited. They qualified, they sent a qualifying offer, 10% above my NHL salary. And I think it was still a two-way. It was just, the QO it was a two-way offer just to retain my rights. And then they had quickly called after and said, hey, we can't fit that in our cap though.
Yeah.
So if you want to be like, if you want a one way, we're willing to sign you to a one way after this for less money. So that's what I ended up taking. So I ended up taking a pay cut. I would have been there. Like looking back, I would have been on their team, but I did help them out
Yeah.
in terms of cap space. So I was there. I playing really well on the fourth line. Quinville was the coach. Q was wanting me to earn his trust. I didn't really understand that. 3 years in the minors and dealing with that stuff, lack of call-ups, playing well, not getting a sniff in the playoffs the year before to help the team win a cup. I was angry. I was pretty upset, and I was in and out of the lineup that year. He was just like he just didn't trust me yet, right? And I see that now, hindsight being 2020, but back then when you're in the midst of it, like I lack some emotional maturity, some patience, and there's a lot of grace for me there in that too. So I think I had 17 or 18 points, 49 games, playing 7 minutes a night in and out of the lineup for guys like John Scott. And John Scott,
Yeah.
when I was in, was sometimes my line mate. And it's not like a negative, but it was just, John Scott's like awesome, awesome guy. And, he knew what he
Different
was.
roles.
He played a good role, a heavy role, and a good player for that role. So, but he had been playing defense his whole life. So now he's playing offense with us. He's on my line, right? So, that stuff's getting in my head. And I just finally said to my agent, I said, I'm sick of this. Like, I'm done. Like, I just said, hey, Q hates me, blah, blah, blah. My agent's like, no, he doesn't. Like, he loves you. Like, every time I talk to Q, he loves you. I'm like, he can't possibly love me. Like, it's never going to work here. I got to get out of here. I need an opportunity. I need to play top line minutes. Like, I just need to, like, find myself here in the NHL. So we silently just requested a trade. We just basically told Stan like this is it. We need to get out. And I was in Edmonton, warming up before we took the ice for warm-ups, and skipping around, doing my dynamic, whatever. Kaner's there with me, and our player personality guy comes out, Tony Bowman. He goes, "Hey, Skills, coaches want to talk to you." And all season that had been happening where I'd be like go into the coach's room and they'd yank me from the lineup. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, great. Sweet. I'm out of the lineup now. Like, and they
Just
would do
like
it
that.
last minute. So I walk into the coach's room in the visiting room in Edmonton, and everybody's sitting there. Stan Bowman sitting there, assistant GM sitting there, coaching staff sitting there, everybody's there. And I'm like, okay. So I like quietly sat down, and Stan just said, Jack, we traded you to Florida. It was just like that quick. It was like, thank you so much for what you've done for us over the last year. Like, we understand that you're ready for an opportunity. We're going to send you. So I had a report the following night. I had to play the following night down in Florida. So I had to get from Edmonton to Calgary, Calgary to Toronto, slept in the terminal in Toronto, caught my flight from Toronto to Miami. Guy picked me up from Miami, drove me up into my temporary housing,
Yeah.
couldn't sleep. Um,
No,
just
not at all.
full of piss and vinegar, couldn't sleep, went in, threw the uniform on. I ended up posting, I think it was like 12 hits and like 6 or 7 shots.
Yeah.
And I got like 20 minutes ice time, and I'm not kidding you, I needed an IV. So they gave me an IV after the game. So I was playing like fourth line heavy minutes for 20 minutes of that game,
That's crazy.
right? Because I was playing fourth line all year.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, I was still like in like heavy forechecking, hips to hands, like, make the right play, physical, finish every hit, and, shoot the puck every chance you got. And I was just playing like 100 miles an hour with no control. Not the way you
Surprised
would
you didn't
play
drop the
top
mitts with
six.
someone just out of it too, right?
Yeah, I remember Jordan Leopold sitting at the face-off with me and going, man, long travel day, huh? Like everybody knew it was like 24 hours of travel for me to get there from Edmonton. So, and he was playing on, it was against Buffalo.
Yeah.
Rang it off the crossbar, Miller. It was like a crazy game. And I was just the next 13, 12 games from there, I was just trying to find my footing again, like what it felt like to be in the minors, top six, just relax, play a little loose, like read the game, but I couldn't get there. And I ended up tearing high ankle spraining in Ottawa, and that was it. Like for the season, basically. Like I couldn't finish the year on that, And I ended up like like one or two, a goal and an assist in like 13 games and like minus like 1,000. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And you're like, this ain't good. And they still extended me 2 years, Florida, but I got back in. It was a coaching change. Pete DeBoer was there when I first got there. He got fired. They brought in Kevin Deneen.
Yeah.
And Deneen was just oof, like it was really hard with him.
Yeah.
Uh, he was a really, really intense guy and really couldn't find my confidence with him. Couldn't really earn his trust. And it was just kind of like, oh my God, this is a disaster.
Yeah.
And we had the lockout and the following year, it was, or that year, I don't know. It was just messy. The timing was all off. So if I look at it now, like I wish that I would have had one of these player development guys
Hmm.
that are currently working for the team, working with me consistently back in Chicago and just letting me know, like, hey, 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 Q loves you, right?
Yeah.
But he wants you to play the right way. And if you earn his trust, like he's going to give you a bigger leash, you're going to climb the lineup. Like you're playing really well. And if I looked at my stats, I think it was like +4, +2, +3, +4. I don't know, something like that. 17 or 18 points, 49 games, 7 minutes a night. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
looking
Your
down
final
like
year with Chicago. Yeah. 49 games, 17 points, 25 PIMs, +3.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I would have rode that wave and ended up with, let's say 25, 30 points, like I probably would have gotten a healthy extension from Chicago.
Yeah.
But I was impatient. And that's just how the cookie crumbled.
It's funny you mentioned that, right? Because I kind of went through the same thing with Los Angeles, LA, and that was a time where so my second contract ended. It was the 2010-11 season, and I remember I was talking with Hextall. I was in the room, and he's like, we have so much depth at our centers. And I'm like, maybe there's 31 other NHL teams out there that have a different opinion, you know. Um, but then I look back, it's like, okay, well, I could have had a good minor career or, you know, something different. But then I got injured. It's like, great, I just blew out my shoulder first game of that next season. Um, Now you went on though to play with a couple other teams after Florida. You had Columbus,
Correct.
you
Yep.
had Colorado, and Vancouver.
Yeah, so I was on a 2-year one way with Florida. Went into the offseason after that year. The second year of that contract, we didn't make the playoffs. And I didn't post up good numbers and they
Yeah.
weren't extending me. So just not a good look in free agency. So went into that summer going, oh my God, I'm hopeful for a one way. I believe I deserve a one way. I'm an NHL player. I really hadn't really established myself yet, but those are the things we were telling myself. Columbus ended up signing or sending me a heavy two-way on like day one, July 1st. And, my agent convinced me of signing it. It felt like a demotion. And I went into camp kind of like a head case, just like nervous, just like I'm going to get sent down again. Basically a self-fulfilling prophecy because I ended up getting waived.
Hmm.
And, got down to Springfield and first 5 games there, I wasn't like first couple games, I was like not really doing much, wasn't playing great, was just negative. And game 4 or 5 of that year with Springy, it's something like in a game on a bench, I just realized like this is worst case scenario for me. Like I'm a seventh overall draft pick. I'm in like my 6 year pro and I'm in the minors. Like this
And you're
isn't
playing
good.
in Springfield.
And I'm playing in Springfield of all
Yeah.
places. Like they can have that town. Sorry guys, right? They can have that town. So like
Either that or
I'm
Worcester.
like, I'm like, whoa, this sucks. So I like loosened up and I said, you know what? This is it. Play my way. And I started putting up numbers and I started playing confident and got a couple call ups. A lot of stuff transpired that year with Columbus. Won't get into the details. Super long story. You need like a 4 hour podcast for that year. But I ended up, my last 3 games of that season with Springfield, I ended up with um, what was it? 6 goals, 3 assists, and 2 fights,
Nice.
something like that, or
Yeah.
or a fight. Right? I was hot, so I got called up. stuck with them as an emergency call up because I was maxed out on my call ups for that year. So someone was injured, so I was okay to be there. And someone kept getting injured, so it was like perfect. So I'm there for the rest of the year. I ended up um, starting out waived in the minors that year. I ended up on the first line with Johansson and Boone Jenner going into the playoffs against Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a full spectrum year, grabbing like climbing out of the pissy well, so to speak,
Right.
right? The pissy well has slippery walls. So
Yeah.
I had to get out of there and had a good year. And I was like, oh my God, we lost game six. Malkin turned it on, got a hat trick game six, and that was it. That was the end of the series. So I was like, oh my God, I'm getting extended. Like I mean, it's got to be Columbus. Like they love me here. So they ended up offering like a two-way. I was pissed. I was like, what are you talking about? Like I was just on your first line in playoffs. You're gonna offer me a two-way. And ended up taking a heavier two-way with the Islanders, went into camp, had a great camp, but they had signed three one-way forwards the day after I did on July 2nd.
Oh man.
So I was like going into camp, going like, where do I fit in? So now I got to prove myself better than one of these one-ways. So whatever. So it was all this stuff like it was all this like perseverance and adversity things. I had a great camp. They ended up waiving me, telling me like you earned your spot here. You're not going to be in Bridgeport for long if you squeak through waivers.
Right.
Um, and I was pissed. So I ended up getting a phone call from Chris McFarland from Columbus the very next day saying, hey, we picked you up on waivers. We need you here. You got to play your last preseason game. So I had to drive 10 hours from New York to Columbus, played
Crazy.
their last preseason game, and then I was up with Columbus for the whole year. And I ended up making more money than if they would have offered me a one way that summer.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just like really interesting. And, ended up having shoulder surgery that year. It was just the whole career. If you look back on it, it's just like a perfect storm. The
Yeah.
whole it's just like a perfect storm. And ended up doing PTO with Colorado, betting on myself, heavy two ways. I'm not signing a two way. I'm an NHL player. I'm going to prove myself. Go in there, earn a contract, play for Colorado that year.
Mm-hmm.
Following year, same thing. PTO again, Vancouver, heavy two way offers, turning them down. Going to my PTO in Vancouver, make the team there for the whole year, and then game 363, Gabe,
Yeah.
it was when I realized that I belonged. So I had 5 games. I played 368 games. So my last 5 NHL games, I was playing really confident, playing my brand of hockey, putting up numbers, helping the team win, playing on the third line with Brandon Sutter. I think Bo Horvat was on the line too. And tore my ankle game 368 in Minnesota after scoring my last NHL goal in front of my family. Tore my ankle. Charlie Coyle bumped me in against glass, caught my edge. All my weight went on my edge, tore my ankle. Boom, done for the year. So having an exit meeting with Willie Desjardins. What happened last 5 games? Oh, but Willie, the best way I could put it is felt like I belonged.
Yeah.
I want you back next year. So like we're gonna talk to your agent. I'm like walking in that one of those boots down the hallway. I'm like, oh my God, I found my home, I found my coach, whatever. And a week later, Willie got fired. So that was it. That was the
Unreal.
end of my NHL career, basically. I went off to Europe and that was,
Yep. Yeah, you
yes.
played four. Well, you kind of had a small stint during a lockout year, um, right in Austria or something.
Yep.
Yeah, and then towards the end of your career, that's when you finished in the KHL, the Swiss Elite League, the DEL, and then in Austria, which are all great leagues, great experiences. That, to be honest, that's a podcast too to talk about the European game versus the North American game, and then just the experience. So I don't want to go down that one right now because I want to focus in on the present, like what you're doing now, what you've learned from your career, and how you're applying that, to what you're doing. So as you retired, you got out of the game. Obviously, hockey's in your blood, and you've always wanted to continue to stay involved in hockey to some aspect. So, what did you get into after you retired, and then talk to us about the Jack Skille Hockey School?
Yeah, so I met my wife here in Park City. We started communicating when I was in Switzerland in 2019 and came out here to visit with her and I fell more in love with her and and the town and everything. I'm like, this is a sweet life. So I'm gonna move here. And I had a really tough year in Switzerland with Chris McSorley. Again, that's a podcast 2.5.
Oh yeah.
But so I hated hockey, didn't want to play it anymore. Decided I'm going to go into youth hockey, and I built JSHA with Jack Skille Hockey Academy. Was coaching 12U hockey, and I woke up one night, middle of the night, after having a dream playing for Vancouver, scoring a couple goals, which never happened at home, but the crowd went nuts. And I just told Sarah, who was pregnant with our child, Leroy, I just so scared to death to say this, but I was like, hey, I just had a dream and I think I want to play again. And she's like, you got to go. So um, I ended up, long story short, getting signed by Kurt Kleinendorf, who's a local guy here in Park City. He lives in Minnesota and Park City. He was the head coach of Nuremberg Ice Tigers in the DEL. He had been trying to sign me that April, but I told him at our kitchen table, like, out of respect for you, out of respect for the game, I can't commit to 1 month, let alone 2 years that you're offering me right now.
Yeah.
Right. So he ended up signing me after Christmas that year to be, veteran leadership in the room and, help do make a playoff push. We ended up going, I think it was like 17-1 when I got there, made it to playoffs, COVID hit, blah, blah, blah. So I extended 2 years, COVID hit, and then was like, kind of like, what's Germany going to do? What's Germany going to do? We get into the offseason. Germany's doing stuff with the hockey league. The hockey league's making all these weird decisions, slashing pay cuts, like making pay cuts, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, listen, I got only like a year or two left here. Like I got to milk what I can out of the game.
Yeah.
So I terminated my deal and I ended up playing for Salzburg Red Bull for more money than what I would have gotten in Nuremberg. And that was a tough year. And then ended up basically retiring. So hooked back into my academy. That year I was waiting on a contract from Munich in the DEL
Mhm.
through the Red Bulls. And I just was like, whoever comes first, whatever comes my way first is what I'm taking. And Mike Adamak from the Ice Miners called me and said, we need a new skills director. And we started talking salary compensation. I was like, well, this is okay. Like this is something. So I hooked in there. And that was really the start of being established as a youth development guy. And JSHA really didn't turn into what it currently exists as until I took my job after that year with the Ice Miners to go to Wisconsin to be a director of development for Valley Sports Academy, where I was in charge of their programming, their facility, and spring, summer program, winter skills, fall, prep camps, and all that stuff. So really got some work experience there with like working spreadsheets and communicating, managing a staff, and developing a product. And ran into Troy Ward there because he was in Wisconsin. He ran a defenseman clinic for us. We had a really good 3-hour meeting before that camp started, and I learned so much about coaching and planning in that one meeting, and that stuck with me for the rest of my life. He gave me his development model, mind, body, skill systems, games, and I just said like that literally you took my brain and put it on a piece of paper.
Mhm.
And can I use that? Absolutely, take it, make it your own. So that's what I've done. So the academy currently is, I ended up resigning from that position in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, as a director of hockey because it was just too much work, spending too much time with other people's kids and my own, our, personal life, things were going on. It just wasn't really healthy.
Right.
We needed to move back to the mountains. So we moved back to the mountains and I took, what I developed, took Troy Ward's development model, made it my own, and then developed our spring program here and our summer program. And it filled up year one, and it's been growing ever since. So really just using that to grow the game locally. An established spring program didn't really exist back then, 2 or 3 years ago. A summer development program like you see at Blaine Ice Arena, FitMap Mega, that didn't exist at all here. So I wasn't going to do an 8 to 11 week thing. I felt like the market wasn't ready for it. So I just stuck with 4 weeks. And it was great. It got established right away, and we started seeing kids developing super quick, and the program was working. And then we started hiring better staff, spending more time coaching and developing our staff, and we've improved every single year. So that's where we stand right now with JSHA.
That's awesome. And so with JSHA, are you also bringing teams to tournaments, or like are you coaching teams as well too on top of the individual development?
No, so I was a 10U coach last year, just to help Mike Adamek out. He had like 4 different teams he was coaching. So, as a buddy of mine, I was like, man, I'll come, I'll show up and I'll
Yeah.
run stuff for you so you can kind of just like turn your brain off for a little bit. But this year, no winter stuff other than, I do like some winter skill stuff. Tournament wise, this spring we're done. We're not doing tournaments. It's been long enough where last 3 years with VSA 3 years ago, we did tournaments. I hated them. I thought they were candy coated pieces of stuff.
Hmm.
And, I just felt like it wasn't really good for development. And I finally decided this year that, what, I'm just going to be true to myself here. And I'm going to design a program that doesn't include things that I don't agree with. Philosophically. So we eliminated our tournaments this year for a spring program. We're just basically doing a practice and small area games, 3v3 cross ice, full ice scrimmage on the second day, whatever that is for the numbers. And then we're going to focus really heavily on our summer development program where I'm going to really beef it up. We got to update our website, but we're going to have some really cool qualified coaches coming in to help us with that program. Mike Janda, UW Stouts, or not UW Stouts, or UW Eau Claire's current assistant coach. He came in
Mike
last year
Janda?
yeah, Mike Janda.
He used to run the Junior Sharks program.
Yep. So he's got ton of experience running their program out there. Obviously, a really sound, amazing hockey mind, and an incredible person, good friend of mine. Had him out last year, it went really well. So we're going to bring him back. Ryan Kanasowicz helped coach for 2 weeks last year. We're going to bring him back as well. We're gonna bring Christian Horn, his current assistant, in. So we're going to have some really good established hockey world coaches coaching that summer program.
Hmm.
And that's really just where I want to focus in the spring is going to be development for 6 weeks, but tons of fun for these kids. And then mom and dad, like they don't have to worry about spending an extra $2,000, $2,500 over a weekend for a tournament or more for 2 tournaments. Like I said, spring and summer hockey tournaments, unless it's like, one of the most prestigious tournaments on the planet, like there's no exposure there. There's no real reason to do that. Like there's more development opportunity in practices and unstructured play in the spring, than there is, some coach from some team telling your kid how to play some systems or a boatload of systems at 11 years old that he's never even learned before for 6 weeks just trying to win hockey games. Like
Yeah.
it's not really
It's not about the trophies and the banners. It's about development.
100%. So this year was just like, we're living that out, period. I don't care. I don't care if we got to collapse our program over it. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm really willing to roll that dice. And if people don't want to show up because they want tournaments, hey, that's fine. Like I totally get it. I hope you come back. But I think we're going to do fine. We're already doing fine with registrations. And there have been a lot of people that have thanked me. Like, thank you for not making us go to a spring tournament. We're burned out by that time of the year. We want to have fun. Our kids are in lacrosse, you're playing soccer, blah, blah, blah. Then those tournaments just get in the way of those extracurricular activities for our kids.
Do you work with all all levels of kids and ages, or do you have a specified group of kids that come to your academy?
So I throw a big blanket for spring and summer. We do pros
Hmm.
all the way down to 10U for our
Awesome.
summer program. And then we do 10U up to 16U, and we're doing a girls 14 and 16U this year and an 8U
That's
uh,
fantastic.
program this year, just to kind of like really help grow the game because there's some 8U players locally, especially locally in Park City and Salt Lake area that are looking for that extra development. I think we're capping it, I want to say at like 20, 25 kids at the 8U. Just really keeping it small, and really keeping it available for the kids that do already have that internal fuel and are looking for that extra ice.
That's awesome. And so with the development, and as you mentioned, you're working with pro guys, down to 8U. Is the curriculum, is your coaching plans the same, or do they differ based off the ages? And more specifically, like skating, right? Skating is a craft, it's a science. And so are you implementing the same things at U8 as you do at the pro level?
Of course not. No. So at 8U and the younger ages, obviously our product, I studied in that window of 2019 that I shared a while back of, what am I going to do? I don't want to play pro hockey. I want to do youth hockey. I studied to be a personal fitness development coach, or athletic development coach off the ice. So I studied biomechanics. I studied a bunch of stuff and learned about it. And I got the end of that road and I just said, I'm reinventing myself too far here. Like I just need to like maybe hook this stuff into hockey. So over the last 3 years, I've been really hooking those biomechanics into hockey. So when it comes to younger players, you know, I, I really want to teach things like posture. I want to teach ankle flexion. I want to teach weight transfer. I want to teach stride mechanics. And when in JSHA we break down our skills into three departments: technical, tactical, and cognitive. So with the younger age groups, 8U, 10U, 12U, 12U's when we start 10U and 12U, the good players, like the advanced players, we start introducing tactical,
Okay.
taking a puck away, angling, competitive contact, things like that tactically. But really it's technical foundational skill. Especially when it comes to skating. We'll do a lot of single leg stuff. We'll try to progress you from what I call bilateral, 2 feet on the ice, weight transfer, posture, ankle flexion, bilateral to unilateral, single leg stuff. Because we believe that, you're constantly on one leg when you're skating. So we need to have that single leg strength and stability and coordination. So I've designed a lot of newer drills that include those biomechanics, especially with the single leg. Shaves, light shaves, change of direction, gliding on an edge, single leg glide on the hollow of your steel, really hammering on the details of the technical aspect. And then, trying to get them advanced within that practice hour as quickly to the puck as possible, because every kid wants to pick puck on their stick.
Mhm.
And develop those methods, include those skating methods into a reception and a shot, forehand reception, forehand shot, backhand reception, forehand shot, two touch, one touch shooting, all those things, hooking into the biomechanics of the skating. So the biomechanics of skating is basically our main foundation, technical foundation of the sport. And then including puck touches, transitions, mohawks, spatial awareness, spins, um, everything. And then we with the younger groups, we'll go technical and then cognitive, right? Cognitive small area skill, like gives and goes, like, playing away from the puck, creating a situation where you got to win a battle, activate a player from a line 2-on-1 at the net, trying to, add puck movement, because that's another area where I feel like in soft skill development, kids are carrying the puck too much. They're not passing. They're not passing and then moving. They don't understand how to play off the puck. So that's really our tactical skills broken down into 4 categories: offense at puck, defense at puck, offense away from puck, defense away from puck. And so if you were coaching our clinic, Gabe, I'd say, okay, hey, I want you to work an offense away from puck drill today. Right. And here's one that works for me, like, and progress it or regress it according to what you see. So when we're in station settings, like, we have an idea, but I make sure that our coaches, we all write our plan in pencil, depending on the numbers of kids that actually do show up in that given hour. How tired are they? Did they just come from a hockey practice? Did they just come from a lacrosse practice? Are they going to a lacrosse practice or a hockey practice after? What's going on? Like, and that helps us in the moment quickly dial in the volume of reps and the quality of reps. So it's a very fluid situation. With pro guys, it's more advanced. Like, everything's just like up like 10x, right? So it's
You-
like we're doing a ton. Like, I do a lot of wall play, a
Nice.
lot of wall play.
Do you use a special software to put together your drills, to put together your practice plans, or like how are you structuring that together right now?
No, so I keep recorded. I just record my practice plans, through Google Sheets. I have a practice plan template. I save all of them. I look back, I build off of it. Hey, that really worked for that one day with that group. I have practice notes. I haven't really put it into a software because what I've discovered is if you put it into a software, you remove the creativity for coaches that you have hired, right? And you don't have the time, and the coaches don't have the time to really meet with you consistently enough to really develop them. You really just, what I learned from Wardo is just like, if I'm going to meet with you, Gabe, I'm going to say, Gabe, what are your gifts and abilities? Like, what were you good at as a player? What are you good at, like coaching? Like, what are those things? What are your assets here? Like, and I'm gonna help you get into your comfort zone as a coach, and allow you the space to create and progress the drill or regress the drill according to your coaching eye. If I throw it into a program for you, you're going to see a lot of new stuff, and you're just going to sit there and be like, yeah, like I understand the concept, but I don't understand how to like execute that drill. And then now our quality dips, right? And I'm not gonna be able to talk to you half an hour before practice and have you do that. Maybe you, maybe some other guys, but most guys aren't capable of doing that. So here, this is what I want you to do. This is super important. Like Dusty Campbell, like I want you working a puck support drill, offensive side of the puck and defensive side of the puck. Here's how you progress, or how I would progress it into like an activation setting, into a 2-on-1. Or you incentivize the two defending players that are supporting the puck, like finding you, and you're moving around. They're trying to find you off the battle, and really just trying to help him. And then I'll rover and I'll dive in the details. But when it comes to that system, like I tried writing up a template, and it's like it's really challenging. What it ends up becoming is like it's for the coaches, right? Like you gotta get your coaches on the same page. You got to use the assets of your coaches. You got to explain certain concepts to them that you believe they can grasp and they can experiment with. And then you got to show them stuff on the ice every once in a while. And that to me, it's like not only just the on ice product, but it's also like, hey, you're going to work for JSHA. Are you the guy that parks in the back of the rink? Because I don't like that. Like I want you parking, I want you walking right through the lobby.
Yeah.
And I want you walking right through the lobby after practice. I want you talking to parents. I want you communicating with parents. Hey, little Johnny there, he had knee valgus or varus. Like I want you to like you're gonna see little Johnny play more than me this year. Can you pay attention to his knee? Like you see like valgus, it goes in, right? Like I want you to pay attention to that, see if we can correct it over the course of the season. Right. And then they start paying attention to those things and they start seeing it. And now mom and dad are seeing the development, right? And it's like, okay, and that's part of retention. They keep coming back because they see the results of the product. And it's all relationship based. Do you know the rink manager? Do you know the rink manager's name? Do you know the rink manager's wife's name? Do you know the rink managers? Does he have kids? Who's the Zamboni driver? Like, do you know him? Like, it's all relational because you call that Zamboni driver, he might be open up the rink at 6 a.m. for you, right? So if you spend the time and show that person that you do care about them and you build a relationship, those are things that I'm really teaching coaches. The on ice product, I can throw some concepts at guys, but I really want coaches to use their own experience and their own assets because that really increases the quality.
Um, and and so like when you're running these drills and doing your camps, I think what I'm kind of getting at too is like if there was a way for you to have the drills that you guys are going to be keying in on, sending those out to the kids and saying, this is what we're going to be working on. So it's really minimizing, sitting down on that knee and trying to draw out a drill. And then as you know, just with youth hockey, there's some kids that get it right away and then other ones that need that demo. So what I'm kind of saying is having a platform where you can draw the drills out, send that out to the kids and then saying, this is what we're going to be working on. And then not spending as much time drawing it up and,
Right. So
you
to
know,
combat that, what I've learned, I've tried that before with other parents, players and parents and stuff. They don't read, right? So like I have a website chock full of stuff. I get emails every day, like, what's the schedule?
yeah,
What are the dates? I'm like, here's our website, right? So like they're not willing to do that. So basically what I do is every camp clinic program, I end up having a meeting with the parents and the kids, and I lay down expectations for our camp and what we're going to be working on. And I meet with our staff separately, and I say, these are the concepts, these are the drills, this is what I want to do. And I use icehockeysystems.com.
Okay.
Right. So I just use their rink thing, and we have a meeting, I design all the thing, and I want you there at least a half an hour before you hit the ice with the kids. We're going to review your drills, we're going to review your stations. I don't want you drawing on the board at all in my practices. I want you dialed and knowing exactly what you're going to do for that practice plan. And it's going to be a quick 3 minute or 2 minute maximum, boom, quick and easy concept. And then you're going to build your drill from there.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to keep adding steps there instead of drawing all of it, right, and confusing the crap out of the kids. And then I use rink markers on the ice. I don't use cones. So if I draw a drill, if I ever draw like a quick, I draw the thing, boom, boom, boom. This is what we're doing. Okay, good, done. It's like 2 minutes. We're in the drill. 2 minutes maximum. That's the max I'll give. And then it's all about that drill. If you're going to explain that drill for 2 minutes, it's got to be 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. It's got to be quick, lots of volume, tons of reps, and the kids are red faced, sweaty, and smiling by the time they leave that station.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's
Because
kind of what
ice time is critical and it's
yep,
expensive, so you got to use the most of it.
yep. So I'm that coach that if you're working for me and I look down at your station and you got kids on one knee, I'm pissed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I'm
That's
absolutely pissed. It's wasted ice.
no, I was the same way, and that's as a hockey director, that was one of the things down in Vegas that was so successful is having the kids constantly going, but not just chaotically. Like you have the rhythm, and that's where the we've talked about before on other episodes is the USA Hockey ADM model of having different stations where you can focus in on different skill set, but during that same hour of ice, which you also utilize the ice time as well, which is awesome.
100%.
Now, on development, and we talked about this too, is what do we do in the spring? What are kids' options in the spring, in the summer, and then also based off the age level, and that's where too you mentioned back is playing in tournaments,
Yep.
and I agree with you because there was a time when I was a young kid I told my dad stop signing me up for these. I just
Yep.
because the like you people are calling like, hey, want you to play here, want you to play there. It's like, is it the best thing? Well, I think it's dependent on your level of play and your age, because there can be the summer national camps where you're playing for that U15 or U16. You're going to that national camp, or you're already established with a country and you're playing like Four Nations, or you're playing like
Yep.
an IHF tournament. But when we're talking about U14, U16, U10, U12, playing 3, 4 spring, summer tournaments that are supposed to like showcase tournaments. Jack, you've been at the highest level. NHL scouts. You talk to them right now. Uh, how many spring and summer tournaments are scouts going to?
None. None. Zero. And the thing is like they don't really start scouting you until like 13 or 14 years old, amateur wise. Like, and they're going to all the places that have been established by USA Hockey or Hockey Canada for the most part. Like all this extracurricular stuff, um, it's not anything outside of we're going to capitalize on crazy. I'm sorry, I'm going to be the guy to say it.
Yeah,
Like we got a bunch of crazy parents out there that want to spend a lot of money, and we're going to take it. We're gonna facilitate that, and we're gonna capitalize on it. And one of the scouts I was talking to, I'll never forget it, said, "Youth hockey is the professionalism of mediocrity."
perfect.
It's we're professionalizing youth sports. It's like these kids they're not ready for that attention. They're not emotionally mature enough to be told every single day like you're the best player and you need to play on the best team. And that is scientifically proven to be wrong for just development as a human. What needs to be told is I'm proud of you for working your hardest. I'm not proud of you because you scored 2 goals today. I'm not proud of you because you guys won. I'm proud because you worked so hard that entire game, that entire practice, and you did extra stuff. You know, like the value of hard work needs to be instilled instead of the value of winning and getting points. That's not, we're a team sport here. Like, how do you become a better teammate? How do you become like, how do you develop work ethic? How do you help your team win? Not just by scoring points, but blocking a shot, making the right play, listening to your coach. Are you coachable? Like all these things. And we're sending these kids the wrong message with all these tournaments. Not to mention, we're starting to deeply dive into actually early specialization. And if you
Yeah.
talk to guys like Eric Hayden, who's an orthopedic surgeon now up in Park City, who presented a beautiful presentation up here in Park City on early specialization and the negative impacts of it, five-time Olympic gold medalist, basically goes from being a gold medalist in speed skating to a professional road biker. Like
Wow.
insane athlete, right? In fact, small story here too. Like my dad and Eric Hayden went to high school together. That's how small the world is.
That is small.
So, and like so he knows my dad. It's like really a neat thing. But talking to him about it, he's seeing all these like reoccurring sports specific injuries at 10, 11, 12 years old. And the medical advice is rest and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing scientific here. It's just other than you got to take a break and let the concrete harden.
Let
So
your body heal.
let your body heal. Play other sports that use other things in terms of coordination and movement patterns, that to balance you out as a holistic athlete. That will help you, socialize in other arenas, other fields, and make other friends, and have different sets of adversity and different sets of coaching, and really understand how to mature emotionally through sport, and be good in school, and do all this stuff. But hockey's turned into this thing where like there's a local thing kind of going on. I won't really dive into it, but they're considering going up to Canada
Yeah.
several times a year. And mom and dad are asking me about it. Hey, if that's for you, you want to go do it, go do it. But let me ask you a question. How's little Johnny going to do in school? How's that going to work?
Yeah.
Is he gonna, socialize with his friends in his neighborhood? Is he gonna, be around his friends enough at school? Like, or is it just going to be hockey, hockey, hockey all the time? Right? Because that does matter. There was I think it was NASA or it was Harvard. I think it was Harvard put out a study saying if you're elite by the time you are 10 years old, there's a 10% chance that you're going to be elite by the time you're 18. Therefore, a 90% chance that you're going to burn out.
Yeah.
So that's what we're combating. Like for me, it's like I just don't think when it comes to development, if you want exposure in Utah, follow USA Hockey. Right. And everybody here locally, this is like the lack of education. I'm sorry, I'm being blunt. But like I've told people that go to the state camp tryout. Well, it's poorly run. How is it poorly run? It's a tryout.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for development. Your kid either plays good or he doesn't. And if he gets cut, you can sit there and say that you were pegged as a kid that was a bad kid, or you had a bad relationship with one of the evaluators and that politically got in the way and you didn't trust the evaluators, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, your kid was not good enough at the tryout. He didn't make it. I know it's really hard a hard pill to swallow, but instead of like telling that to your kid, and that's the mind portion here, we're telling our kid, well, you should have made it. You should have made it over him, or you should be on the power play more than your teammate, or you should get more ice time, or you should be this and that. And you're completely going against what your coach is saying. And you're telling your kid that he's better than he actually is. And instead of saying, hey, buddy, you're on the power play, or buddy, you didn't make it to regionals. We got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do. And then you go find those places that support the work, not the exposure. And I'm sorry, if you're a guy in Utah, and I'll name it, if you're a guy in Utah and you're only putting together wagon tournament teams, no practices, you are a money grab.
Yep.
Let it be known. You are
It's
not developing any kids.
just to show up and play. You show
Show
up
up and
and play
play.
kind of stuff. No.
And it's happening everywhere, right? But it's also happening in Utah now. So that's the reality. If you're doing that, you're just taking people's money. I'm sorry. You can sit there and you can tell me till you're blue in the face that you're doing development. My question in return is like, well, how's development show up for you? And some people complain, oh yeah, we went to this tournament. We didn't like the coach because he didn't coach my kid. Oh yeah, did you have any practices? No. Well, how do you expect your coach to coach him on anything at 12 years old if he didn't do any practices?
Yeah.
Because now he's going to teach him in the middle of a game and confuse your kid. He didn't work on it.
It I know it's crazy. Or even going to a tournament and it's who are the do you know the kids on the team? No, they're from all over the country. So you've never played with these kids ever? No. And this is an elite tournament at U12. Yeah. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I've had people from Dallas last year call me and ask me to do that. And I said, this is not how I work. You want me to do that? You guys are all going to have to fly up here to Park City, or I'm going to have to come down to you in Dallas. And we're going to have to do a weekend long at the very least, a minimum of 9 hours of ice of instruction,
Yeah, you got to
teaching,
put a
playing.
program together.
Yep, and playing and teaching so that if we get to the tournaments, I can actually coach your kids on the bench. I can remind them of that angling drill we did. I can remind them of that forechecking drill that we did, or puck recovery drill, and triangle patterns. And hey, remember that drill that we talked about? Like, yeah, you were supposed to be the bird flying high there, but instead you went down right next to the dog and cat, right? Like yeah, so you got to you have these little the beauty of practices is you get reps, and then you also as a coach you develop verbal cues and demands. So when you get into that game environment, you can use those verbal cues and demands or the name of the drill. I've used that all the time with our 10U team last year. Hey guys, remember animals? That's the dog hunts down the puck, cat supports the dog, bird flies high. Remember that dog? Remember animals? Yeah, yeah. Okay. We need a dog, a cat, and a bird. Right. And then, oh yeah, yeah, you're right. And then the next shift they go and do it. So now you're coaching kids with verbal cues and demands that
Yeah.
you collected from experience and practice with them. But if you just show up and you paid six, seven, $800 to show up to a tournament without any practices, manage your own expectations there. That coach cannot coach your kid and don't expect them to. You've wasted your money on basically a tournament experience. And if that's why you're going, that's great. You want to play with other kids and you want to be in a different location, you want to meet new parents, well, that's money well spent at that point. But if you're expecting development and exposure and a coach to coach your kid, that's wasted money.
Yep. I know. Work on your development, put the time in. And then the other thing too, you mentioned is playing other sports. Getting the athleticism, the the brain development, and also the muscle memory, and playing other sports, because playing other sports just makes you a better overall athlete.
And
And
that's
you
exactly,
know,
sorry to cut you off, but that's our
yeah,
summer program at the Oval. Like Dusty Campbell, I told him when we first hired him, like, I don't want hockey specific stuff, right? If it's 14 and older, we can start doing a little bit more hockey specific trainings in the
yeah.
weight room and stuff and resistance and all those things and repetition with that. But for the young kids, let's work on general athletic development.
Mhm.
Let's throw the ball around. Let's jump, let's leap and bound and zigzag and run and sprint and change directions and roll on the ground and do all those things that these kids are not getting in physical education anymore.
Yeah.
So let's develop them into a holistic athlete.
100%. And I say that just because I've seen what negligence does. And when I was in Vegas, I was also a scout with the USHL Tri-City Storm. So we were connected, same ownership. And so we would have the Tri-City Storm USHL training camp in Vegas every year. And so I'd see these kids, come in, we'd have basic training, and you could tell the difference between the kids that worked on their development and actually played other sports and became an athlete versus the ones that were hockey specific. And I'll get into just one fine detail is the kids that were hockey specific couldn't do box jumps, couldn't do a basic ladder pattern, like just the standard ladder where you're going foot in, foot out, foot in, foot out. Box jumps, just a straight 2 foot jump. And it was
Dave,
amazing that kids couldn't do
Dave,
it.
I've trained 16-year-olds off the ice that can't skip rope and they can't skip
Yeah,
because they played hockey their whole life.
yeah,
And you're like, wow, like these are like foundational athletic movement patterns. And
it's unreal.
You're 16 years old and you're just starting to do this training. Buddy, you're like 3 or 4 years behind.
Yep. Yeah, that boat's already gone.
Yeah, when I take on an athlete or anybody, I ask them, "What's your training age?" I don't want your age. I want your training age.
Yeah,
What's my training age? Well, how many times? How long have you been training? Well, I'm 16. I started training last year, so you're a 1 year old,
for
right?
sure.
We got kids in the Midwest and Canada and Russia, Finland, Sweden. They're like 6 years old, training age wise, by the time they're 16.
Yeah, yep. Same with like Europe too. Europe is, crazy. They're doing stuff. The skating, the just the basic fundamentals of jumping, jump rope, like you said too. They're just doing all those fundamentals at an early age.
Yeah.
So, um, but man, hey, this has been awesome, and I know we didn't have my co-host Tommy on this, and so I do want to leave us with a couple questions that he would ask if he was here. And so the first question I want to ask you, which is essentially Tommy's question, is what is your best hockey memory? And this can come from youth hockey, pro hockey. Like, what is your favorite hockey memory?
Um, I mean, gosh, I'm between a bunch right now, but I'm just gonna pick the national championship.
Yeah.
I mean, that was incredible, and you know, you don't realize the moment when you're in it. Like, and then I look back on it, and all of us guys are still in touch with each other.
Hmm.
Like, it's like a really cool experience. Wisconsin, Green Bay, regional, win the championship in Milwaukee, riding the bus back to Madison, knowing that there was like a 200-foot line waiting outside of the college club for us. Walking down the middle of State Street with the trophy as our whole team. I mean, it was just like our little mini parade. It was a really, really cool experience and really solidified those relationships for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Winning a national championship is well, I don't want a Stanley Cup, but winning a national championship is different because you essentially only have you have a small block to do it. Where pro you can bounce around different teams, you can try and get a cup within 15 seasons, but college you only have that short period of time. But next question is when it comes to players, and you've played with and against some amazing players. So the first question is, who's the greatest player you've played with? And then who is the greatest player you've played against?
No question, Nate McKinnon playing with. Um, I was on his line for one shift and I dumped the puck. And that was
What
uh,
what makes him so special? Because like I played with some guys too. Like this, there's the speed, there's the awareness. Like what makes him special in your eyes?
he's a he's a explosive, highly skilled north, south, east, west power forward for God's sakes. Like
Yeah,
he's just a machine. When you were playing with him, you're just like, how did he just do that? The sound, I can relate it to like if you shut your eyes at a ballpark and you hear the crack of the bat, you know it's a homer, right?
yeah,
But like with Nate, he had this sound when he's his hand speed with his foot speed, like the connection of the two. Like his hands were almost faster than his feet, and his feet were fast, right?
yeah,
So like the sound that his stick made on the puck while he was like stick handling up the ice, it's like a smack. Like it's not the ice, the stick hitting the ice. It was like his blade was like smacking each side of the puck. It's how fast his hands are moving. And I'll never forget that. Like just seeing him skate by the bench and you could hear like the smack, 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 and he's like hitting his crossovers. He's changing direction. Guy throws a hit on him. He reverse hits him, runs him over. And then like, so in terms of like the perfect player,
yeah,
especially when he started playing 200 feet, it was just like, holy crap. Like, you're like, this is insane. Like this guy's going to win a cup for sure.
yeah.
And leadership ability. Like when I was there, he was still relatively young, second year. But then he started really developing his 200-foot game. and developing his leadership skills. And he really brought the team along with him. So I'll like by far, I mean, I play with Kane, like
Yeah,
Magic Man, right? 2.0, and then like Taves, obviously really special players, and they're right up there with Nate, but like I'll never forget playing with Nate.
yeah, that's awesome. And then what about against? Like, who's been the best player you played against?
Best player I played against, Datsuk.
That's it. Oh, yeah. Talk about
And
hands.
I mean, I could say McDavid, right? All those guys, like
Yeah,
those guys are certainly up there. But in terms of like this is Datsuk, and I'm going into a 50-50 battle with him.
yeah,
And I'll never forget he in one game in Florida, there's a 50-50, and he kind of like slows up and looked at me, and I'm like, so I reached for the puck, and he just went dink, lifted my stick and stole it.
yeah.
And then he's playing offense, and now I'm chasing his rear end the rest of the shit, right? And I'm like, oh, he cat and moused me. Like, and then so it was like later that game, same scenario, and I outweighted him. And I was like, I went back to the
Awesome.
bench and I was like, oh my God, I got the puck from Datsuk. I was like, it was like a highlight moment. But 99 times out of 100, Datsuk's pulling away with that puck. I
Yeah,
mean, the stick skills, the his heaviness on the puck, his hands, like I mean, in terms of changing the game back then, like he was, I mean, truly, even when I started playing in the NHL against him, like it was still there. And it was just like, how did he do that? And just couldn't get the puck from him.
that's crazy. No, that's awesome, man. I love it, and again, I appreciate your time here to talk hockey. And when it comes to you, this is where I want to give you the the floor a little bit. Just how can people find out about Jack Skille Hockey Academy? Do you have a website, social media? Like, give us everything you have. How can
Yeah,
people
just
find
go. We have jackskillehockeyacademy.com. And you'll see all of our programs there. And then obviously you can follow us on Instagram for all of our updates and cool videos that we share. Um, excuse me. Yeah, you do that. I'm more of a guy that I'm really about the product speaking for itself. I will never claim a player. There's several players that played in JSHA for the last 4 or 5 years that have moved on to higher levels of hockey, but I'll never spotlight them and claim them to be our player. I want you, if you're interested in showing up to our programs, just come in and ride the wave and go attend the parent meeting, understand who we are, what you're paying for, what we're doing, reinforce your kid work ethic and grit and compete, and we'll lay that on layers of that in our programming. And then when you get to the end of those programs, just question like, hey, would I go back again? And I'm not going to recruit. I don't recruit people.
Yeah,
I don't think it's appropriate. I think it sends the kids and the parents the wrong message. So that's maybe my programs are going to fail in the long term because of that, but I don't really care because it's just more of a moral, ethical boundary that I've laid for myself, and I just won't do it. I love working with your kids, but I
hmm
will not recruit them. So show up and let me know like what you think of the product. And so far, we've had really good reviews.
yeah.
So
It's
the other thing I
results
want to leave,
driven.
what's that?
Results driven. Like they're gonna see results.
They're going to see results. Absolutely. If their kid puts in his best effort, I always say, like, if he puts in his best effort, he's going to improve. If he goes through the motions and just shows up because you want him to be there, well, let's be honest about that, right? Is it us or is it, the kid's just lack of effort? And, we'll try to develop that for him and try to help him feel what that feels like to compete hard and play his hardest and push his threshold. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't buy in, he doesn't buy in. Don't
Yeah,
expect him to get better. And, maybe hockey's not for him. But I think in the reality, like for Utah people listening to this podcast, I think it's like, everyone's got a good person in Gabe. Gabe, it's amazing. We're so happy to have you in the state. Guys like you moving in now too.
yeah,
George touched on, I saw your episode with him. Like, people don't necessarily really appreciate what we currently have in the state. I mean, the list goes on. We have George Chalos, who's just an amazing hockey mind. He's brilliant and he really understands the development journey. And You got Tom Anderson up in Park City, who's been here for years, who's a really good skills coach. You got Mike Adamak, a former D1 college hockey player, that's the director, and he gets a lot of crap, but all the directors do.
Every director does, yeah.
Myself, we have Dusty Campbell. We have all these people that are really trying to do the right thing and the correct thing for these kids. And then, reach out to those people, ask questions, and then when you get conflicting information, I always tell parents, I say, just take it with a grain of salt and be a critical thinker. Like, where's this message coming from? Is it coming from a parent that doesn't have any real hockey experience, but he's talked to other parents outside of the state? Well, doesn't really sound like that's like a leg to stand on. Like, have we talked to a person that has experience developing as a hockey player, playing at a high level, experience coaching? What are their resources? Who are the people that they're in touch with? Because the hockey community is like really tightly knit. I stand personally on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
Like I'm reaching out to those guys when I have a question, and I'm constantly learning. So a person with less playing experience, coaching experience than me, giving another parent advice needs to be questioned, right? And as a critical thinker, and, be patient with that. But also what I'll leave everybody with is, if you want your kid to develop and be exposed and make it in hockey, follow USA Hockey's tryout process. There's no better way. And there's no better measuring stick than that. If your kid doesn't make it, it's not because of politics. Your kid wasn't good enough. Matter of fact. So help your kid, give him the tools to make him better, have a good offseason, and prepare for that next tryout the next year. And the last thing, lily pad jumping, right? Jumping from organization to organization to organization just because you don't like a coach's method or a director's method or whatever, or because your kid's not playing with the best players in the state, that's a mistake. It's a mistake. It doesn't need to happen. You don't need to play with the best players in the state. You need to play at the best level. So I would like more of the best players to go attempt to play for Wasatch Renegades. Wasatch Renegades, tier 1 in our state, the only tier 1. They're the highest level. So if your kid's one of the top 5 or top 10 players in the state, you should be at that tryout as soon as your kid can play at that level, period. End of story. Whether Wasatch Renegades figures out their financials or not, that's completely on them, but you need to show up. You need to show up and pay attention to the AAA level in our state if you want to play at the best level possible. You might not win a lot of games, but you're going to be playing at the correct level at that point.
Love it, man. This is awesome. And again, thank you for your time talking here. So
yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we're gonna leave it there, everyone. And don't forget to like the channel, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Once again, Jack Skille, former NHL player, now hockey ambassador, hockey coach, owner and operator of Jack Skille Hockey Academy. Thank you again for your time, Jack.
All right. Thank you, Gabe.
Awesome. For the Southern Utah Hockey Report, I'm Gabe Goche. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.